As we begin this new year, many of the issues we continue to deal with here in South Florida are getting a fresh approach and in some cases a new dose of funding. Problems such as housing affordability, homelessness, transportation, and the environment will certainly make headlines. And just this week, with the anniversary of the tragedy a little more than a month away, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission finalized its report on last year's shooting in Parkland. This 458-page report from the commission, which is made up of law enforcement officers, public officials, mental health experts, and parents of the students killed, details what failures led to the tragedy and how to make sure it doesn't happen again. Here with the latest on the commission's findings and more topics expected to make headlines in 2019 is Brittany Wallman, senior reporter for the Sun-Sentinel, and Chuck Strauss, editor of the Miami New Times. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So much to talk about. Brittany,
Yes.
Let's start with you. Let's talk about this MSD commission, the report, kind of highlight and outline for us what some of the big findings were, because they made recommendations which are now going to Tallahassee and to the governor and eventually to the legislature, maybe to enact some new laws, correct?
That's right. A lot of what is in the final report had already been sort of hinted at over months, but it lays out in really excruciating detail all of the breakdowns. There are so many things that went wrong that led up to the shooting. And so one of the recommendations is to arm teachers, which is going to be very controversial, obviously.
Yeah.
There's going to be a call for accountability for everybody who, the deputies who didn't go in when they heard shots. They did not call for the ouster of the sheriff, but as you know, there's some that want the governor-elect to do that when he gets into office. There's recommendations about making classrooms safer. Some people are surprised that even still there's not a place in each classroom for children to hide from bullets.
Yeah, hard corners, they call it, or hardened areas where if a shooter is able to see through a window, it's an area that he or she won't be able to see, so that they'd be protected, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
One of the victims was nudged out of a hard corner and shot and killed. And some of the testimony I was reading the other day, a girl was in a corner that wasn't hidden, and she was behind one of the shooting victims, and that's why she lived. But so there's going to be a lot of debate that will be the basis for lots of debate, both at the legislature and here in Broward County.
Yeah, and also for mental health. I know one of the things I read was they call it information silos. So I guess if a student is going through some sort of mental health, they're working with a psychologist, et cetera, or having some behavioral issues, that it can't stay with that psychologist or with that school if the student moves on to a school. That information needs to be shared across the board in the district with all schools. Correct, Chuck?
Oh yeah, I mean the shooter at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, there were so many signs. I mean, almost more than hardening the school or limiting access is dealing with kids as kids and finding kids that are troubled and separating them and treating them. And the report deals a lot less with that than it does with these exigencies. But really what we need to do, I think, is deal with the kids and improve weeding out the ones that are really dangerous and getting them the treatment they need.
And start there. We know this commission will stay together, I think, until 2023, so we'll see what happens this year as the governor and the legislature gets this information. Chuck, let's move on to another headlining topic, transportation here in South Florida. Always a biggie, always difficult. In Miami-Dade County particularly, we know, and I've interviewed several people related to the SMART plan. We know that there's not enough money for rail, and that Mayor Jimenez was looking at putting in this, it's a bus system for South Dade, a rapid transit bus system, which is much less costly. So talk about that. Let's talk about transportation going into the new year for Miami-Dade County.
Let's look back. I mean, in Miami-Dade County, they passed a tax that we've all been paying for years to build Metro Rail.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was that we were going to build Metro Rail down US 1, up 27th Avenue, that people who wanted to get to work were going to do it, or were going to get that service.
Yeah.
And Miami-Dade, in decades, not just under Mayor Jimenez, but for years before that, hasn't fulfilled its promise to the people. And Miami has among the worst traffic in the country. Washington's a little worse. New York maybe is a little worse. but we're right in the top 5 of the worst traffic in the United States because county government has failed to fulfill its promise to its citizens.
And Brittany, let's talk about transportation in Broward. So I know that was one of Mayor Beam Furr's big issues when he became mayor to work on. So the voters passed this raise in the sales tax in order to raise money for transportation, $16 billion over 30 years.
Yes.
So what does that look like in Broward County?
Well, I mean, at least you have rail in Miami-Dade. We don't even have that. We don't even have a very good bus system. So they're not making any promises about rail, but there is the potential for rail. There is the potential for some bus rapid transit. But I think in the immediate future, what we'll see is just restoring the bus service that's been underfunded, especially during the recession. There's a great demand by people that don't want to drive or they don't have cars, you know, to get to work on time. And so there'll be, and then another issue that has been, ever since I've lived here 20 years, people have been asking for traffic signals to be timed.
Right.
So that you're not stuck at a red light for no reason.
That's one of the most frustrating things. Yeah, absolutely.
So supposedly we will finally, you know, get the lights.
That's a doable thing, hopefully.
Well, is it?
I don't know.
We will see.
Got to get the engineers involved on that one.
The most interesting, I mean, transportation-wise, one of the most interesting things happening right now is that the Brightline train has become Virgin Train, and that's going to change, you know, the people that run. Well, it's going to change. It could change the way that people get around South Florida. Unfortunately, it's a private service, and unfortunately, it has 2 stops or 3 stops in South Florida, in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm, and that's ridiculous because it is the only train track that really runs through the urban cores. If the public had made or could negotiate a piece of that so that there were stops more stops along the way, I mean, that would change everything.
Where would those stops be? Where do you think would be some better stops? Maybe just from Miami to like North Miami, that kind of thing?
Sure, Hallandale, or Hollywood maybe, Aventura, you know, maybe North Miami. You know, if you just had a few regular stops along the way, a lot of people would use it. I think right now the Brightline trains, or the Virgin trains, I love that name, is empty. I mean, it's empty. You see it again and again. I've taken it a few times, but it's like an adventure.
Yeah, it was cool though.
It's wonderful, but it's not useful, I think, to commuters at all.
We need more. Yeah. Sure. All right, so let's talk about the Dream Mall too. That was one of the things you and I talked about. So, and that kind of leads us into environmental issues, which is a big deal. So talk about which is supposed to be like a destination mall because you get to ski there and ice skate and frolic in the like a water area.
I have a thing
so what
here.
do they call it?
I want to read it. It says,
okay, go ahead.
2,000 hotel rooms, multiple indoor roller coasters, an artificial ski slope, skating rink, water park, fishing hole. You're going to go fishing. And performing arts center, and this is my favorite, a lagoon with submarine rides.
Oh,
wow.
Because that's what we've been missing.
Exactly. There's you can't go in a sub indoors in the Everglades. That's what we really need to do.
So this has been approved. So what do you think is going to happen though? They have to get permitting. I mean, does that have a long way to go still?
There are still a bunch of approvals that have to happen. The biggest approval though came in 2018, which pushed it ahead. I don't think it's if they break ground in 2019, I'll be surprised, but it's possible, and they're saying they will.
Talk about the environmental impact.
Oh my God.
Potentially. I mean, it's out there in the Glades.
Yeah, it's the biggest mall in America. They're talking about 30 million visitors a year in a place that's just farmland right now, in a place that's not accessible by any really good highway. It's going to completely change the nature. I mean, the good news is, I guess, if you live in the east, maybe it's going to switch some of that traffic out west.
Right, which is already bad.
Which is already bad.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And you have the Dolphin Mall out there already, kind of in that zone. All right. So we'll see what happens with that. The other big issue is homelessness. And we know that in Fort Lauderdale, that camp that was there, Brittany, that encampment, which is there for about, what, 3 years, right in front of the library, was finally moved out and dismantled. And all of those folks were given places to go. So talk about this kind of new approach to helping solve the homeless issue.
Well, Fort Lauderdale has tried a lot of things that just resulted in negative publicity internationally, you know, cracking down on people that go out and feed homeless people. And they had tried to dismantle this camp. And now nationally, the model is called Housing First, and it's this idea that, you know, if you have a home, you're not homeless. So The business community was so fed up with having a homeless camp in the center of downtown and the optics of that. So they have put people into either apartments, a lot of them are still in hotel rooms. A fraction of them, there were maybe 75 of them. Some of them are going to need to be put up forever because they have issues. But some of them would be able to get on their feet. Some people just didn't, they needed help getting their birth certificate or ID so that, or pay the first and the last and the deposit.
Sure. They had jobs, some of them. We had Lynn Wines from the United Way, who's a part of all of this, because this is really a public-private partnership with Broward County and Fort Lauderdale and the United Way and Auto Nation, and people kind of all coming together and putting money towards this. And I was surprised to hear, she said some of these folks have jobs, they just don't make enough money, like you said, to put a deposit down on getting a place to live.
They were living in tents. And when I went there, I mean, there was a tent there that had a generator. They had Roku TV or something.
I saw that you reported on that. That was amazing.
It was quite lavish. And people that I interviewed there, they were clean, they had jobs. You would never know that they were living, that they were homeless, living in a tent. So I think people have this idea of the person that is asking for money at the intersection as the now that's the chronic homeless person that may never have a home. But a lot of them just can't, you know, the cost of housing is enormous in
Let's
South
talk
Florida.
about, that's another big issue. We've talked about that on this show too, housing affordability. So let's talk about that, Chuck. It's in both counties. It's a problem.
Well, Miami, it's a far bigger problem. Let me just, I want to address the homeless issue in Miami versus Broward, because it's the beauty of being Miami is that you can actually look good because you're close to Broward, because Broward is even more screwed up than Miami is.
Oh my.
Well, in some categories.
So, I've worked in both, but in Miami they passed a tax, they created what they called a continuum of care after the Pottinger case was decided, in which a federal court said homeless people have rights. So Miami passed a tax, and that tax has built shelters across the county, and first shelters, then apartments, in places that people can go. Still, this year they went back and sort of had to nudge the county into taking action on the Pottinger, but they created a continuum of care, and that's really been shown to work. Broward has been stubborn in both it's enforcing the laws that it has to help people out rather than kick their butts, and in building the infrastructure that's needed for this. So, getting back to housing prices, I mean, rentals in Miami are ungodly high. It's harder to live in Miami than it is to live in Washington, D.C. It's harder to live in Miami than it is, much harder than it is in New York.
Well, and I know that this has been an issue, and officials know this. In fact, I know the city of Miami just tentatively approved rules forcing developers to include units for what's called workforce housing. So it seems like there's steps that are being made to try and tackle this a little bit. And you've talked about micro units.
In the downtown area, they created a requirement. It's an experimental project where they're going to have affordable housing in new projects that they build. And it's a very small area, and it's a very tiny beginning, and it's way too slow, but it's the right idea.
It's the beginning, There's so much more to talk about, but we've run out of time. So you guys will just have to come back. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was great having both of you. Really
Great
appreciate
to be
it.
here. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
And what issues do you think will make headlines in 2019? We'd love to hear from you. Send us your take on any topic that matters to you. You can always reach us by email or via our Twitter or Facebook page at Your South FL. Leave us a comment or post a video. We might even share your comments on the air. As always, we look forward to hearing from you.